Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, for this final Film Rec Friday of May, we are putting together a list of films that hopefully will pay homage to Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, these recommendations, I think, sort of deal particularly well with issues on this topic. The first of which is a movie that features a young girl and how she handles the sudden onslaught of some very complicated emotions. And even though it features a child, I definitely think this movie is accessible to people of all ages. I know as an adult, I absolutely adore this film. The other film was one that I would not been familiar with, and it's also really, really phenomenally well put together. And it focuses on a young woman as she struggles to support a mother who is uh, falling further and further into mental illness. And it does a really good job of, I think, exploring the emotional weight of both of those situations. And I felt like it was a really honest movie about that. So if you are not already aware, Mental Health Awareness Month has actually been going on and being and has been held since 1949 here in the U.S. And every year in May, organizations across the globe, across the country, really, really work hard to sort of spread awareness about mental health and mental illnesses and how we can all be more informed about any of those. And if you are interested in learning more, I would definitely recommend checking out sites like NAMI. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness, and it's a fantastic website with tons and tons of resources on it. And hopefully that site will be able to sort of guide you to whatever information you might need, or to any links that might be more helpful as to where to get more data. Anyway, as always, all of these recommendations are available to you entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. And so without any further ado, let's jump into the recs. Okay, my first recommendation is available on both DVD and Blu-ray via our CleveNet service, and that is 2015's Inside Out. Now, Pixar is one of those companies that is phenomenal at being accessible to both children and adults at the same time on multiple levels. And Inside Out is just one more prime example of that. So in this particular film, we are following a young girl named Riley. She's 11 years old. She's a Midwestern girl. She's happy. She's got this life that she knows. And then suddenly she and her family are uprooted from the Midwest all the way to the West Coast in San Francisco. Now, that would be a big, big shift for anyone, including adults. But for a young girl who's never known anything else, that shift is massive. And so suddenly her emotions are kind of in a pretty serious upheaval. And at this point, the film really pivots from Riley to focusing on personified versions of all of her individual emotions. And this is where the story really sort of makes itself at home. We're dealing with joy, we're dealing with sadness, we're also dealing with anger, fear, and disgust. But it's that joy, that duo of joy and sadness that really are vying for primary focal points. And the journey that those two emotions go on is really kind of phenomenal to follow. You've got these two storylines. You have Riley, all the things that she's actually experiencing in her world, and then we have all of these inner stories going on. And it just does such a great job of illustrating how those two different conditions can exist at the same time in this person. And it does it in such a way that it's really, really accessible, whether we're talking about a 10-year-old, or we're talking about a 20-year-old, or we're talking about a 40-year-old. There will be things that resonate with you at all different points in your life. And I think it's really hard to make a film that does it as well as Inside Out does. I mean, this film didn't come out until I was well into adulthood, but I can imagine absolutely adoring it and really being feeling like I was really understood by something, by this medium as a child, because it does such a great job of expressing like the emotional turmoil you go through anytime there's upheaval or when there's not upheaval. It's even little things that illustrates how you might not have any idea how to handle it. And the fear emotion is kind of played for laughs, but it's not inaccessible either. It's not just a joking matter. The character of fear is also very real to Riley. It definitely helps that the cast is absolutely on point. Voice acting is one of those things where it can go either way. You can either be, I mean, there's some performances that are just so full, even though all we're really doing is hearing an actor's voice, and they don't get to physically personify these characters, so they have to do all this emoting just through tones. And the two leads, Joy is played by the phenomenal Amy Poehler, and Sadness is played by Phyllis Smith, who, I mean, I'd seen in plenty of series. If you are a fan of The American Office, you know her, but I had not really seen her anything beyond that. So she plays sadness in a way that it makes you laugh, but 100% will also make you empathize and really make you understand all the complexities that just this one emotion can possibly have. As an adult, the first time I saw it, there's one scene in particular where I was completely like bawling while I'm watching it. And that one is kind of the norm with Pixar films. I feel they're just well-crafted stories that can get you to connect with characters in a way that, I think is absolutely fascinating, because one, these are animated features, right? It's not even cell animation, it's all CGI, but you're still able to make these emotional connections. But yeah, there was one scene in this where I was totally bawling, and then all subsequent viewings, I definitely still get a little, choked up, because it's just so good at pulling you in and making you feel the same things that Joy and Sadness and Riley, of course, herself are feeling. It's incredibly compelling. The journey is, exciting to be on, especially when you're in that sort of other emotional world rather than the real world. But I think the real world sort of anchors it in a very literal sort of space. It's not a suspend your sense of disbelief kind of universe. The things that Riley goes through, anyone can go through. Most of us already have. But yeah, if you are looking for something that you can watch with people of all ages, that would be 100%, entertaining for people who are, going through many, many different phases of life. If you are looking for something with an exceptionally good storyline, if you like really compelling quest stories, because man, this one does, and it's done in a really different kind of way. If you just like phenomenally well done animated films, all of those things, any of those things, make sure you check out 2015's Inside Out. It's a really, really accessible movie about emotions and how dealing with it's hard to deal with emotions, and it's great for younger people to watch and sort of maybe get an idea of the fact that everyone sometimes struggles to sort of channel things. And I think it does it that way in a non-preachy manner, and it really entertains while it also informs. So again, available on DVD and Blu-ray, 2015's Inside Out. It is an absolute must watch. Okay, my other recommendation for this week is a much smaller film than Inside Out. It's available on Hoopla, and that is 2021's Paper Spiders. I had never heard of this movie before I really started researching recommendations for this week, but I saw it on a list of recommended watches on the Nami site, and so I tuned in, and I am so glad that I did. This is an excellent, excellent film. Whatever you are looking for, this film is just really, really well made and exceptionally well acted. So in Paper Spiders, we are following two women. A young woman named Melanie, who is, just about ready to head off to college, and her mother, Dawn. Dawn is a recent widow, and the two of them are incredibly close. They are not the constantly fighting, always bickering mother-daughter stories that we see a lot of times, but they're instead just, a lovely team. And in the beginning, we hear Melanie describe her mother as quirky, and having quirks. And for the most part, Dawn seems like she's, pretty put together. Again, she's been recently widowed, so that is definitely adding stress to her life. And she does have other, you know, ticks that we see from early on. But as the movie progresses, we see these little moments sort of expand further and further and further. And uh, it turns into something significantly more serious than it was at the very beginning of the film due to a number of circumstances. And the film does an excellent job of telling both stories. Melanie is young and she's excited to be heading out to this new world. I think leaving the nest is a big deal to so many people, and she's got plans for her future that have been in place for a while, and she's excited, and her mother is excited for her. And that's what's really so emotionally draining about this movie, is that you can see Dawn knowing how she's supposed to feel, um, and struggling with those emotions. Um, she Dawn knows that she's supposed to send Melanie off. She's prepared her for the world, but at the same time she's struggling with a number of situations that just seem to snowball. Uh, and on this, at the same time, while we're watching Dawn struggle with these growing concerns and growing elements of uh, concern, we are also following Melanie, who is trying to prepare to leave, but also growing more and more worried about her mother. And we see things really start to clash between the two of them. These questions of what we're supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be acting when the situation is not allowing for that. And this movie did such a fantastic job of, really addressing expectations versus the reality of things, and how, you know, mental health issues can definitely escalate and evolve, and how it's difficult sometimes to know how to support someone who's going through those things. You know, Melanie is really truly so young when she ends up in a position where she really does have to know how to support someone who's always been her support system. And it's really, really sad and hard to watch in places because it feels so real. These two women do such a good job in these two roles. Dawn is played by the phenomenal Lily Taylor. She's always excellent. And Melanie is played by Stephania Lavie Owen, who I had not been particularly familiar with prior to this movie. But, her character of the daughter could have been so overblown and could have been, really one note, but it absolutely wasn't. It was terribly nuanced. So you get that even when she's at her most frustrated with the situation, like, this all-encompassing love for her mother it comes across, so easily. That's never in doubt through this movie. And I think it's so very real and so very raw in places. And that's, I think, what makes it so hard to watch at moments, where it just feels so real, the things that the two women are going through together and individually. So what's even more interesting is that, like I was saying, it feels very real. And I think that's in part because uh, one of the filmmakers really based this on a lot of the things that she had been going through in her own life. And um, this is not a biopic at all, but it definitely has a root in reality. And I think without that production side familiarity, it might not have come across nearly as well as it does. So if you are looking for a really nuanced film that has that sort of visceral, sort of raw feeling to it, with exceptional acting. Seriously, the two women are so good in this. Really solid writing, and just, I think, a really good message about, it's okay for you to be upset or frustrated, or unsure in situations where you're supposed to be doing certain things. This is definitely a great movie to watch. Again, this one is available via our Hoopla service, and it's 2021's Paper Spiders. Excellent movie. Definitely a must watch. Okay, so those were my recommendations for Mental Health Awareness Month week. If you have any recommendations for films that pertain to this particular topic, please share those below. I think the more films that we find that we can relate to and we can watch about things like this, the better, really, to be honest. So if you do, again, have any recommendations, make sure you share them. If you have any recommendations for themes that you'd like to see us cover in the future, those would definitely come in handy for me as well. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I will hopefully see you next week. Bye bye.